आज की वार्ता आज की इस वार्ता में उपस्थित सभी सम्मानित जनों को सादर नमस्कार. Good afternoon and my heartiest welcome to all. I am happy that we are again here for another session of KU-IIC, and subject of today's talk is, as Dr. has said, how to plan for startup and legal and ethical steps. You know that India promoting new ideas and startups to make our country flourish more and its youth independent. And KU-IIC is also working on this. And we are trying to promote our students so that they can they can initiate their own startups, right? And जो भी छात्र छात्राएं इस स्टार्टअप को शुरू करना चाहते हैं, तो जरूर ऐसा हो सकता है कि उनके सामने नई परेशानियां आए, कई समस्याएं आए. तो बच्चों, आप एक चीज का ध्यान रखिए कि आपको इन परेशानियों का सामना करना है, इन समस्याओं को हल करना है, आपको घबराना नहीं है. तभी आप अपने इस स्टार्टअप के एम को पा सकेंगे, आप इसमें कामयाब हो सकेंगे. So, keeping these things in our mind, or these issues, by taking these issues, we have organized today's expert talk for your kind information. And it's my great pleasure that for today's session we have a very learned and dynamic person, Mr. Vardhan Pant, and with us, and he will share his knowledge, his experiences and his expertise with you, right? And it's so on behalf of KU-IIC's organizing committee, I would like to welcome Mr. Vardhan ji in this session. Namaskar. And
Namaskar, can you hear me?
जी. थैंक यू फॉर योर काइंड कोऑपरेशन. मैं आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद करती हूँ कि आपने अपने इतनी व्यस्ततम दिनचर्या के होने के बाद भी हमारा इनविटेशन स्वीकार किया और हमारे बच्चों से अपने विचार साझा करने के लिए आप तैयार हुए. इस चीज के लिए मैं डॉक्टर दीपाक्षी का भी धन्यवाद करना चाहूंगी कि जिनकी वजह से आज आप हमारे साथ हैं. और थैंक यू दीपाक्षी, थैंक यू सो वेरी मच.
My pleasure, ma'am.
It's just because of you we have reached to Dr. Mr. Vardhan ji, है ना? तो
yeah,
I would like to introduce, or my colleague Dr. Harsh will introduce Vardhan ji in later period of this session. And I am very much sure that your knowledge will be benefited for our students to start their own startups. And I would like to, and it's my pleasure that I would like to thank our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor N.K. Joshi ji, for his kind support and motivational guidance. Thank you, sir, for being so inspiring to this KU-IIC team. And मैं यहाँ पर उपस्थित सभी सम्मानित अतिथियों का भी स्वागत करती हूँ कि वो उन्होंने हमारी इस वेबिनार या इस एक्सपर्ट टॉक जिसको हम कह रहे हैं, इसमें शामिल होकर हमारा मनोबल बढ़ाया. और मैं साथ ही अपने उन प्रतिभागियों का स्वागत करना चाहती हूँ और उन्हें धन्यवाद देना चाहती हूँ जिनके बिना ये सेशन संभव ही नहीं है. तो I would like to welcome and thank all the participants who have joined this session, and I hope that this session will be very fruitful to all the participants. And with this I hand over mic to Dr. Harsh. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you, ma'am. I really find immense pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Vardhan Pant. He currently works independently as personal finance and retirement advisor for people considering end of professional work life and changing how to organize their cash flow. Previously, he has worked in managerial, executive, and advisory positions in large MNCs and startups for more than 20 years in India, United States, Western Europe, and China. Mr. Vardhan Pant is BTech from IIT Delhi and has recently obtained PG Diploma in IPR and Cyber Law from the National Law of Indian University, Bangalore. He has several accomplishments. The list is very long, but uh, I'm curtailing his achievements without taking much time, sir. I invite you for your keynote lecture. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Harshvardhan and Dr. Sushma Tamtaji. And thank you to Deepakshi as well, because of the engagements of you people. I have the opportunity to present some of my information, which hopefully, not only hopefully, I am very sure will be useful to the people that are interested in the topic of starting their own startups or considering a career in a startup, maybe started by somebody else. So with thanking the Innovation Center at Kumaon University, the Kumaon University itself, and the Vice Chancellor under whom the program is running, your festival, I believe. So I would like to just basically now get into the presentation and the talk. So the first thing I want to check, with thanks to everybody who is participating and who has caused the participation of so many people. I want to check whether my presentation is visible to everybody. So I'm just clicking on that. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, sir, it's visible. You can continue, please.
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Okay. And yeah, I do apologize for the loss of time because of technical glitches in the connection. I'm not very used to, in fact, I have never used YouTube live streaming before. I am more used to Zoom. So because of that also, some time we have lost about 7-8 minutes or 10 minutes about. So let me just begin. So right now you have basically the cover slide about what we are doing here. So how to plan for startup, legal and ethical steps. So I want to start with a few disclaimers that all the materials presented herein are on good faith basis, and it includes personal assessment and opinions of the presenter, which is myself. And the audience is advised to measure the information, opinions, and recommendation given here against their own experience and inputs from other sources. Right? Because what happens is that often for giving any kind of recommendation, advice, etc., nowadays the system is of licensure, that you should be a certified, let's say financial advisor or certified securities analyst, etc., in order to make any recommendation. And then you have to follow the exact, thinking and posturings, etc., of that institute whose certification you hold. So therefore, anybody trying to give an opinion on things that are based on his own experience, in his own words, etc., always needs to have this disclaimer that, okay, you need to balance it with other sources of information that you have. Okay, and of course, some material in this presentation have been taken from the internet, which are available to the general public, and it has been used under fair use principles. That is, you can use small parts of something for a transformative work, which is not a copy of what that particular work is about, from where you have taken some definition or some small snippet. So what is the objective of this presentation? We are talking about startup organization, what they are, and it is important to understand what startup is, because every small company or every new company is not a startup. Okay, so what is a startup? Why have any interest in startups at all? And then the main thing is, of course, how to go about planning a startup, planning and executing a startup, and what are the legal steps and ethical imperatives that you should not fall foul of, and what are some recommendations, suggestions around it. What we will also be lingering upon is funding of the startup, that is financing it, meaning raising capital for it, and venture capital, which is a topic which is inextricably linked with startup. Startup means venture capital. That's how the thing has evolved in the first place. So I am visible. I am audible correctly, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. So our agenda is basically, first we will talk about the basics and terminology, because without that we cannot understand any recommendation, and how to commence a startup, and some salient information regarding funding of the startup, which is a very important topic, and then operating and expanding a startup. In particular, we will be distinguishing what is the difference between a startup and any new company or business that someone might do. So someone can start a grocery store, somebody can start a jewelry shop or jewelry manufacturing, and it may be very new, but so it has just, the business just started, but that does not automatically imply that it is a startup which has acquired a lot of glamour in the past, let's say 20 years or so. The first round of startup glamour was around the year 2000, and then in 2001 we had the .com bust, and a lot of startups went out of business, and people were not talking about startups anymore. And then the new round came around 2010, in which we are still running. So let's distinguish startups. So startups, like any other new business or social venture, begins with an idea towards a commerciable product or service, right? So nothing distinguishing about that. And like any other business, almost, what you would do is that you would start with surveying and conceptualizing what service you can provide, or what product you can offer to the market, which will be of value, right? So first you survey and decide upon what you're doing. Then you build a product, meaning proof of concept. That is, it may be, like we have science fairs for children in school. So there they make these models. So they can make model of a Tulu pump, or any small little device, electroplating, so on and so forth. However, that model cannot be, even if it is working, it cannot be used at industrial scale, at the for producing things for large number of users. But that however works as proof of concept, that this is how electroplating works, or this is how a water pump works, and it can send water to great heights. Okay, so after building the product, then you have to actually scale it up a little bit, make it more real life, and launch it in a small scale. So let's say you are starting a food delivery, home delivery of food startup in Nainital. So you try to do it on a small scale, that you say, okay, I'm only going to cover Mallital over there, and because number of users all over Mallital probably is small enough that your application that you have made is able to handle. You are using your mobile, you are, let us say, offering the possibility of ordering food from multiple restaurants that are there. Okay, then what happens is, then when you launch, then you adjust. That is, sometimes the exact service that you are giving is not what the many customers want. So you adjust to the needs of the maximum customer. Okay, like Jan Hitay, Bahujan Sukhay, meaning the maximum people should get something of value which they want to pay for also, either immediately or in due course of time once your service is established, product or service. So now when people have begun to buy your stuff, that is what is called establishing proof of business. Buy or use. Sometimes what you're providing through the application is actually free for the user. Nonetheless, a lot of users are, for example, Facebook. You don't pay anything to Facebook or for WhatsApp, right? But proof of business lies in the fact that a lot of people are actually using the facility that you have created. So the first step is from survey and conceptualization going to establishing proof of business. Okay, so at this point is when, especially in a startup, that you obtain or add funds from external sources, that is people that are not owners of that business. And so then with the funds that are secured, you will hire full staff and try to scale up the product. That is, go beyond Malital, you go to maybe Nainital, or cover Nainital to all the way to Haldwani, all right? And there are, once you have scaled up a little bit, then you operate or expand what the product is about. So it may be not merely, delivering food at your home. You can possibly add that you can book a taxi also with it, and things like that. So you are operating at a bigger scale now because you have the funds to do that, even if you are not profitable, or even if when you do not have what is called operating profit, that within the month, how much people paid for your facility minus all the expenses that you had, not counting capital expenses. So even if you have a loss, but because you have a very big stash of funds, you are still able to continue and expand yourself, which means basically adding users as well as what services you are giving. So end of the startup cycle is an exit, what is called exit. So exit means that the people who started the startup and the people who actually gave the funds, the lion's share of the funds, now want return of their money. Okay, so how it happens is either via a initial public offering, which is also called IPO, or public issue of equity, right? So when the company goes public, then the promoters or founders of the startup are able to sell their shares. However, often there are some lock-in periods already contractually secured with them, that they cannot leave, just sell their stake within the first 6 months of the company going public. So similarly, the venture capital, for example, that has put in the capital for you, also want their money back, many times magnified. So do the founders. So one option of exit is public issue. Another option is sale of that company to a bigger company, right? And the third one is, which is also popular, is acqui-hire, meaning somebody basically buys the company with the people and the business continues exactly as it was before. And now the founders of that company become the employees of the bigger company. And on their behalf, they are running the company further. Okay, and it is also what happens is, then when you have a very good exit at a very good profit as in many times what you put in, then typically over a period of a year, the original founders, they move out of the company, they sell their shares, and then they go into the next startup. And now this time they do not need any funding from outside. They already have multiple crores of their own. So they are able to start their next startup with their own money. And now the person becomes a serial startup entrepreneur. So there are people who started Flipkart, they've already begun 2-3 other startups, either as founders or as angel investors, that okay, I take 25% in this, an advisory position, and here's my money for you to go and scale your business up. So such people are called serial startup entrepreneurs. So now we are trying to understand what is the special thing about startups. So for that, let's just take a look at some startups that everybody is most probably familiar with, and we are going to pick out a few of these and see inme kya khas baat hai, what's special about them. So the typical trajectory of successful startups, initial modus operandi especially, is that you identify and focusedly solve a business or consumer impediment. Then you build a proof of concept that I talked about earlier, and stabilize a minimum viable product and business model around it. That is how at the end of everything you will make this company will make some money, either make some money or keep on acquiring users, because of it it becomes very valuable, possibly to a bigger company which is in an adjacent line of business. Right. So for example, Microsoft was trying to buy Facebook at some point in time, and then, because it was not able to start a social media product of its own, and it thought that, okay, we are into web browser, we are into office products, why should we not have a social network as well? So instead of building their own, they were looking at acquiring either Facebook or LinkedIn at one point in time. Finally, they ended up buying a small stake for a lot of money in Facebook, giving Facebook exemplary valuations, which we will also see in a later slide. So then after these first two steps, once you have, especially when you have obtained funding of the kind that is tailor-made for startups, right? Then you expand and add more activities and extensions. So let us understand this with the help of three examples of recent spectacular startups. So let's look at Ola Cabs. So Ola Cabs is, as we know, is a taxi calling service. Okay, so what is the problem that it focusedly solved and built a minimum viable product around it, which was affordable cabs on demand upon click of a mobile phone. Okay, now after it got funded, etc., and it scaled up, that was able to handle multiple cities and millions of users, it then expanded into food delivery and errands. That is, if you have to send some document from your home to your mother-in-law or somebody in the same city, so you can call Ola people and hand over that document or food or anything like that, and he will deliver it at the other end for an affordable price again. So Ola has gone into other things other than what it originally started for giving taxis on the click of a mobile phone. Instead of you having to go to the road first, trying to see koi cab hai ki nahi, whether they are taking you in and whether he'll go to this place. So all of that was happening inside the home only, and he would come just below your doorstep. Okay, so then again another example can be Paytm. Its original purpose was pay from and to mobile. Right, instead of opening a wallet giving physical cash, you could just do a mobile to mobile transaction. So you don't have your pocket doesn't have to be loaded with cash to go about doing things. But now, after securing funding, after scaling it up to cover all India, what it has other extensions now. It has the Paytm Mall, which is an online shopping portal within the same Paytm app. Okay, it has some games for time pass. They have some betting, guessing games, etc. Also, ki kaun sa team will win the IPL, so on and so forth. So all these things are also there. And above all, it has started its own bank called Paytm Bank, which is so far away from the original thing, which was a wallet. Right? So wallet or bank are two ends of a spectrum actually, but it has now gone into banking as well. So similarly, Book My Show, its purpose was very simple: the book tickets without leaving home. And it's not key when you go to the cinema hall, you find, it is houseful, then you are coming back. So all of that is removed. You can just book from your mobile and proceed to the cinema hall, just within ka apne ticket liya hai. Right. One thing that I just wanted to underscore is that often in startups, multiple rounds of funding might be needed over the lifetime of the company. Because what happens is that the profits come after many years, or sometimes they never come. Company gets sold at unbelievable price also, because the point is not necessarily being profitable. Some key characteristics of startups. So we have talked about how they go about building themselves, and then there are some other very more fundamental characteristics that we find, which is, for example, untried or unproven business idea or product. So just say in Airbnb, what they have done is they have converted home into hotel. So if you have a home that is not being used, let us say you live in Delhi and you have bought a nice house in Bhimtal, okay, but you hardly use it. You use it maybe 20 days in a whole year. The rest of the time it is just being idle. Maybe you have also engaged a caretaker who is cleaning the room every day, cleaning the house every day, and things like that, doing the chowkidari, etc. But it's not earning you any money. It is just there for you to use maybe 20-25 days in a year, because you don't have that much time, you're busy in Delhi. So Airbnb came up with an idea to encourage people to give it out on rent to people who are coming there on vacation. Okay, for 5 days, 20 days, whatever number of days. Right. So it was an idea that was never tried before. Right. So Airbnb came up with that, got funded, and today it is very, very successful, a very high valuation, so on and so forth. So in startups, one of the characteristics tends to be that untried or unproven business idea has been proposed, and some people agreed to fund it, and fund it in a very big way. And with those funds, they were able to establish it as a successful product. Okay. Then again, unproven or as yet unscaled technology. For example, Paytm was a digital wallet, and digital payments with mobile had not been tried before. Right. Then again, operating by design as a cash flow business. So cash flow business means that the distinction between your capital account, with which typically a company is supposed to fund capital expenditure like plant, machinery, land, and these kind of things. The distinction between your capital account and revenue account. So revenue account means that the sale money that you get, the service or product that you're selling, people are paying you money for that, minus all the expenses, your expenses of paying salary to your employees, and any rental things that you are using, any raw materials that you use in producing what you're producing. Right. So the revenues have to cover for all these expenses, and then you have an operating profit. But often in startups, more often than not, you are not operating with operating profit for many, many years, sometimes never. Okay, so operating by design as a cash flow business. So again and again, you get refinancing with which you are paying for your expenses, and but you are constantly acquiring more and more customers, consumers, users, and beneficiaries. So which is what gives you the valuation in the eyes of a bigger fish in business. And then lastly, unproven or yet unscaled business model. So for example, we have this service called Dunzo in a few cities in India, which is about on-demand errands. In fact, before Ola and Uber started doing these things, it was Dunzo. They started this thing for the first time, that if you have something to deliver from one place to another in the same city at a very affordable price of 50 to 100 rupees, you can actually get that done. You don't have to yourself go and deliver it. In fact, if you want some medicines, you want to buy some medicines from a particular chemist shop, etc., you can also use Dunzo for that. He will do the buying, etc., for you, come and deliver you at your home. All right. So these characteristics that I'm talking about, this is the stuff of startups. As well as in the previous slide, I talked about how they go about, building their business. However, it is little bit difficult to give these things as the definition of startup, because end of the day, if venture capital is funding it, we say it's a startup. That's the final test of things, right? So as an example, what we are saying in the next slide is that every new company or business activity is as such not a startup, but these distinctions have been blurring. So if you see these startups like Chai Point, Fresh Menu, Chayos, etc., they are in normal food business. There's nothing special if you go into any of their outlets. But they scaled very fast. They covered a large territory in India very, very fast, expanded using venture capital money. So we look at them as startups only. Okay. So now we are looking at basically the official definition of what a startup is. And this is from Investopedia, which is a very credible source in the sense that it's the, it's kind of official place where you will find definition and explanation of things relating to investing, including alternative investments like investing in a startup. So if you were to read all this, what they have given, there is no difference between a regular new company and a startup, except that in startup, venture capitalist and crowdfunding is involved, is invoked, and you get it. Of course, you have to be lucky, and the people who are investing their money should like the idea, and it should connect to their vision of the world, what they believe where the world will go. Right. So as such, this definition is given here. I'm not going to read it. Is not really correct. Startup is not same thing as a new company. So it has certain characteristics of its own, which develops the interest of venture capital and innovative funding methods. But because nowadays many venture capitalists are funding very normal business plans, therefore practically one can say, okay, it's the distinctions have been blurry, right? But still, when we are talking about startups, how to start it and how to build it, how to grow it, we have to distinguish what puritanically a startup is as opposed to a normal company, normal new company. So is there any, questions at this point? Am I audible? The speed at which I'm talking is fine. Any feedbacks?
Yes, sir, you are audible. Audience, the student have
Yes,
any
sir.
questions or queries you'd like to ask?
So we can also cover the next section. After that, also questions can be taken. So it's just one section kind of ended. So I thought, let me just.
Yes, sir. Please continue, sir. We will have
okay.
Discussion after.
Sure thing. All right. So thank you. And so we'll just move into the next section. So one thing that is important to talk about is founders of the startup. So startups typically have one or more founders, often 2 to 5, and typically the people that fund startups, the external parties, they like 3. 3 is their optimal, in my experience, that they like it that there are 2 or 3 founders, and the founders bring different relevant technical and business expertise to the table, which are relevant to the startup, to the business that it is going to do. So their delivery of founders is very substantive and technical. So they have these responsibilities. And what happens is then in the startups, we talk about founders, and in a normal company talk about promoters. So the founders themselves are basically also double up as promoters more often than not. So promoters' responsibilities are not substantive and technical. It's more procedural and even one can say clerical. That is, they put together the memorandum of association in discussion with the chartered accountant who is or lawyer who is incorporating the company for them. Then they sign the prospectus of the company, what the company is going to do, etc. Appoint the auditors, bankers, so on and so forth. So they are not necessarily people who they don't have to be people who will actually be building the company. They are simply giving birth to the company. It's like the midwife who delivers a baby. It's not the same thing as parent. Whereas founders are actually parents of that company. So they have a level of commitment that runs into many years, and they are committed to seeing a startup idea up to a fully functioning company. And any external investors that have to invest in the startup, they need to see good founders. That is, founders who know what they are doing and how they will produce the stuff that they are producing, and they are themselves technically capable of doing things, right? So, and so it's not easy for founders to suddenly say after 6 months of getting it funded by external parties that okay, ab main ja raha hu. So that's not possible. That is not expected, at least, of founders. Whereas company promoters' work is already finished once the company is incorporated, and its auditors are in place, its directors are in place, and of course, memorandum of association and articles of association will be filed when the company is being incorporated itself. So beyond these first few things, the meaning, there is not much meaning to company promoter. Whereas founder is like a parent to the company. So they will stick around for quite some time in the company. Unke naam se hi money aata hai to expand the startup. Okay, so I want to also distinguish between incorporation versus bootstrap. So what happens is that sometimes the founders or the proposed founders of the company are not 100% sure what exactly they want to do, but at the same time they don't want to just sit idle. They want to start with some product development already. They do not incorporate. There is no functioning agreement also between them as to what role responsibility the different founders will be discharging, what will they be paid, and in cash or in equity. Sometimes you see the money might be put by a couple of founders only, and another 2 founders have those technical skills and the commitment to deliver things for which they end up getting equity. So it's called sweat equity. So these the at least the 2 to 5 founders that you are going to have need to be people. Some of them need to have direct skills of that are required in actually bringing the company up from ground, and at least 1 or 2 need to have the money to put in the initial money. So for that, it requires some sort of an agreement that okay, I am only going to put up this much money, but I am going to put up this much work, and therefore I will be given 25% of the stake in the company. So when all this agreement etc. is evolving, you are still trying to scout the market. At that point in time, you need not already register a company. You can run in a state called Bootstrap, where the company is simply functioning as an extension of the founders, and all the expenses that have been incurred by the founders when they were bootstrapped can be later put into the company as pre-incorporation expenses. Okay, so now we are actually in the section where we are going inside startups कि कैसे वहाँ पे काम होता है. So here we are talking about funding and capital financing. Funding or capital financing. So for your first stage in this, what are the stages in that? So first stage is the pre-seed stage. So here the money that you have are your own funds, your gullak money, money you have borrowed from friends, family, maybe given them a stake in the company that, okay, you will get 2%, give me 2 lakhs to use. Or it could be one part loan that I will return you in 3 years, 3 times what I am taking, and plus you will get 1% also in the shares of the initial paid up capital of the company, right? Then you could have some mentors who wish you well, have money to spare and put to risk, so they can give you money. Sometimes you can approach local businessmen who do not have technical expertise or direct ability with the particular line in which you are trying to build a company, but they would like to invest in that idea. So you can get some money from there. Sometimes some incubators, some startup incubators or innovation cells of universities, etc., also have some grant money. So sometimes they can grant you some money to start your product. Okay. So the next level of funding is called the seed stage. So from pre-seed, you're going to seed, at which the people important are angel investors. The angel investors do not give you a lot of money, but they can actually fund you up to 1 crore or so. But now what happens is that angel investor has the same kind of apprehensions कि ये company चलेगा कि नहीं चलेगा, whether these whether there is dum in this or not. And for that, you should have already reached proof of business stage. That's when angel investor will be willing to put in. But then if you have already reached that stage, you might as well tap venture capital. However, if you are lucky, you've been talking, sending your presentation, your business plan to many angels, maybe via your incubation center, and so they possibly can invest in your company when it is when it has not really reached proof of business stage, but it is still in proof of concept stage. That is, you have built a prototype, like that model in the science fair that people make. That's not the real thing, but that just only shows how it will work, the real thing. Okay. So the other problem with the angel investor, not really problem, but aspect that we must recognize, that they do not put in. These are high net worth individuals who want to play in this startup space. They may give you a relatively small amount of money, but can take a very big stake. That, let's say someone chooses to give you 1 crore of his money, but he may take 70-80% of the equity, which can sometimes be very unfair to the founders who are actually the ones who are making the business. So always you have to see that what is the give and take with angel investors. So next stage is when it is in series A, B, C, and so on funding stage, where the real venture capital comes into play. So these are people with big money, but they today, as of now, they need to see a minimum viable product running and some proof of business that you have begun to acquire customers, and they are using the product, and the product doesn't fall apart when it is being used, unless you have made a startup successful before. In that case, they may even fund you based on a PowerPoint. Now, in the past, venture capital has invested in companies and given big capital, like for example to Airbnb, just on the basis of the idea presented on a PowerPoint. But those days are not there any longer. So if you want big money, you have to have a working this thing, not just a prototype, but actual product, which even if launched at on a small scale in a small territory, but people are using it and they are growing. Right. So after this series A, B, C, and one thing I want to mention here is that, for example, there is this very successful, meaning very well-known startup called Swiggy, which is into food delivery in places like Bangalore from restaurants. So with the mobile, you can order food from any restaurants that is linked with them, and they will deliver it to your home. So about 2-3 years ago, they raised their Series F, means the 6th time they got big money from a venture capital, and about 100 crores or so, very big amount. And they had not come to a stage of profits even until Series F. So this is, the power of venture capital, that you can get big money without being profitable, but your user base has to at least keep on growing, so that they can see that at some point they will be able to sell it as value to a bigger fish, or somebody with a very big company with an adjacent line of business. And then finally, the funding method is the stock market ecosystem. That is, you actually go public. You do a public issue of your equity. Right. So when you do a public issue, again, big amount of funds come into the company as additional new capital. And those who were already owners of capital in the company can now begin to sell off their ownership, or partly sell off and still become crorpatis. And with the remaining equity, they can continue holding in the company. Sometimes they are also employees of the company. They are also founders of the company. So let's say a founder, after several rounds of financing and refinancing via startups, he now has only 3% ownership in his company. So the company goes public, meaning after the company goes public, he is holding only 3% of the total shares issued by the company. So he can sell 1% and still have multi-crores in his bank, and he's still owner of 2%. He's still the chief executive or vice president of marketing, for example, in the company that he started. So what is an operational, what are the operational characteristics of a typical startup? So I have mentioned some of these things already, that typically it's a long pathway to accounting profits. Accounting profits means sales is what you are getting, the money that you're getting, and the everyday expenses that you are incurring, like office rent and your raw material costs, employee salaries, the computer for employees to work with, etc. They are getting, they are well covered by the sales of the company. So then you get accounting profit, that this particular operating period of this month or this quarter or this year, I was profitable. It does not take into account capital expenditures like land, machinery, etc. Okay, which yield their benefits over several years, and they are reflected as what is called depreciation in the profit and loss account. So in startups, for many years, you will not make accounting profits. It's basically operating as a cash flow business, that you have money, most of it might well be capital that people have put in as equity or loans to the startup, and you are paying your expenses out of that, right? So, and this is why these specialized funding agencies called venture capital institutions are associated with the name startups, because they fund this kind of a company for many years. No profits, but they still fund it because they know, where they can, sell that that startup, even if it is not profitable eventually. Okay, the second, however, let me also say that lately venture capitals have been asking the founders of the company to show them a pathway to profitability. At least, even though they may not be making their decisions still on the basis of whether company will soon be profitable, soon have positive operating profits, but still they want founders to be thinking about being profitable rather than merely only relying on the company getting sold at a very high price because of the user base. but it's not necessarily that they are making the decision on the basis of profitability. Their basic idea is to be able to sell it multiple times the price at which the VC himself entered, to someone for whom there is that running company has many times the value. Okay, so secondly, often startups have young, hardworking, self-starter staff. Okay, so they are self-motivated and working. And yes, it's possible that they are basically working not only because of the work that it is there in the startup, but also for the possibility of getting some equity as employees, and then making a pretty big amount of money if the startup succeeds. So they succeed or fail financially, or not succeed as much financially with the startup. At some point, startups are typically funded by venture capital, or they chase venture capital. They try to get venture capital, and there are good reasons for that, which we will see in the later slides also, and earlier also. It was we have talked about it. Then one important thing is that in startups, typically there is a lot of non-cash compensation for employees, which can take the form of discounted stock purchases, stock grants, or stock options. So stock options particularly, let me talk about, is that you, as you get older in the company, more and more stocks, as the terminology goes, vest in your hands. More and more shares vest in your hands to buy equity in the company. So what happens is, let's say today a startup is being valued at let us say 5 crore rupees, and it is and a particular employee, let's say you are a technical lead making a Uber-like application, or a Facebook type of a social media application, and they give you 1% stocks as options. So what happens is 1% of 5 crores is what will be the price at which you will get those shares. But these you will get, and you have the option to buy at that price or not. And these shares also vest in your hands, that you become eligible to buy them as time proceeds. So these 1% stock may be given over a period of 3 years. That over a period of 36 months, every month, 1/36 of 1%, you will be eligible to buy from the company at a valuation of 5 crores for the whole company, for 100%. And if the company valuation increases over time, then obviously you would like to buy those shares that have vested in your hands, because the difference between your buy price and the new valuation is your profit. But at the same time, it is possible that the valuation of the company can tomorrow fall back to where it was before. And if you have actually exercised your option to buy the equity, it's possible that you have not made any money, or even you can lose money. So what typically employees would do is, when the company is about to go public, or it's clear that public issue is happening, that is when they buy in their vested options. So now I'm trying to zero in on the actual thing that the talk is about, key steps with respect to a startup. Now, the foregoing discussion, as well as the discussion we are going to have after this, is also important, because one has to have the right background and the terminology. Only then these steps will make sense. Right, but nonetheless, this is a key slide in the presentation. So what we are saying is that you need to have an idea, which you need to research, think about, etc. And then a very, very important step is to build a minimum viable product. right? We saw what minimum viable product is in the context of Ola and Paytm and Book My Show, right? And you capture a small market with it, and thereafter you finance for headlong expansion and the resulting operating losses, because you may have to run operating losses for a long time, and for that you need capital, and good source of capital is venture capital in this context. So once your MVP in place, by then you should incorporate or register a company, and for that you have to contact a chartered accountant. It is very simple process, and you don't even need to know what you have to do, because the CA will ask you for certain documents and for certain informations. That's it. He will do the needful of registering your company with the register of companies. Okay, now once you are operating the company on capital, not on revenues, you will probably need multiple rounds of refinancing. Again, venture capital is the guy who to tap for that. And then as you expand your user base, as more and more customers join you or you start using your product on a regular basis, then the valuation of the company keeps on increasing, whether or not it has operating profits. Of course, if you also have operating profits, it will boom even more. All right. And so what is strongly attached with this is venture capital attitude of financing. And the VC can also give you the services of the legal panel for your, let us say, IT security issues or imperatives, or your intellectual property issues that you might trample into. So the VC, because it's giving you his money also, it's no big deal for him to let their legal panel also help you, so that you don't trip on inadvertently on some territory which turned out to be either illegal, or some practice which turned out to be illegal. Not necessarily immoral, but it was illegal. Right. For example, if somebody has a patent over an invention and you begin to use it, they can come after you, that company, for infringement of patent, and they can stop you from proceeding with your work. So when you have a legal panel looking at these things, they can tell you, okay, you are infringing on so and so patent, but if they are to do a court case on you, we will be able to defend it, that you are actually not infringing, or the patent that they have got, we will get that, in Hindi say nirast, they will get it quashed, because that patent is not very correctly granted. So, but that is something a legal and technical person specialized in that field only can tell. What will be the outcome if the patent that you are infringing upon, the holder of that comes after you in the court. Okay, nothing happens on its own. That the entity who owns the patent that you are infringing, they have to actually have a case again. They have to come to know that you are infringing, and they have to bring a lawsuit against you, which they almost never will do until you are making big profits. Right, because they cannot recover anything from you otherwise. Okay, now venture capital is also important from the perspective of giving you a spectacular exit that is at a very high valuation, right? And then that's what will make the startup founders and even some of the employees crorpatis is a spectacular exit at very high valuation, which is why venture capital is chased, which is also one of the reasons why people want to work in startups. Okay, some pointed advice that I wanted to give at this point is that aim and build something small, bite-sized in what it does. Brew just a cup of tea, don't try boiling the ocean. So if you see all those successful startups that we saw in the beginning, they started with solving a very small problem. Booking a table in a restaurant, sitting at home, booking movie tickets, paying mobile to mobile. So as such, the functionality was very, very, very small. And later on, of course, they expand. Once they get multiple rounds of funding, they do that. But in the beginning, you start with something small. Don't, if in fact, if you try to do something big, it is possible that from the very beginning, it is possible that you may not get any investment, because they want to fund something that they feel these young chaps will be able to actually achieve, right? Because it's their money that they're putting together. One important thing here is put together a strong team, and team strong in relevant technical knowledge. So jo bana raha hai, it's not the founders and the initial people. There should be enough people who directly know the thing that is being made, and in fact you have to get to preferably proof of business stage, where you have some customers who are using your product and product is working, band nahi ho jata, it works. And so this thing, and so strong team with technical knowledge, most important, then with some business or work expertise. So not every founder or every core team member need to have business or work experience, but some of them should, and most of them should have good technical knowledge, at least half of them, I would say, because that's what is going to give VC the confidence, to investors the confidence to give you your money. And then the third thing is presentability, that you have nice personality, etc. At least some of you that are building the startup. So the first, so let's say strong team, aim and build something small, be focused, and stay focused also on building the MVP, so minimum viable product, and create small portion of the local market with your product. That is, build proof of business before being too much bothered about funding the startup. Okay, so when you are at proof of business, funding comes truly. And while you are building the product, I would suggest that you take workspace in an incubation center and make use of the contacts, etc., the training courses and all that they have. And then the incubation center space also doubles up as a meeting place for the team. Otherwise, if you are working from home, everybody from their home, it's your efficiency is not so high with that. And then another thing that happens is in incubation centers is that often these angel networks and sometimes even venture capitals, they visit these places and discuss with the founders, with the team, what they are doing and how far they have come with what they are building, what stage they are at, etc. And it is possible that some angel network, if not venture capital, can give you funds at terms and conditions that you think are fair, even before your MVP has actually taken off the ground. So for that also, team is important. They are impressed with the team and its vision. They may give you while you have not even started building the product. But of course, if you are somewhere along the way towards launching an MVP in the market, they can give you an amount of funds for a fair share of the equity. And then so you can get, even in the seed stage, you can get funding if you are within incubation center where angel networks especially are visiting, right? However, now after you have got proof of business, now you have to look for VC after that, but do not exclusively chase VC. Okay, and if you can get a bank loan, take that also. But in bank loan, what happens is that they want banks typically fund things, give loans where in 2 or 3 years you are showing that you will be profitable and be able to start paying the loan back. So that is a model totally different from that of venture capital. Whereas venture capital is not necessarily looking at profits or money back from the operating revenues of the company. It is looking at making multiple times, like 100 times, 50 times what they have given to you by getting the company sold or merged into a bigger company or via IPO. Right. So the another focus, last advice is that keep working on expanding market reach, even if we see money is not coming. Not every company which has even been successful in a small territory gets VC funding. So at that point in time, whether they have money that is yet uninvested, that goes into the picture. Whether they are interested at that point in time in that line of stuff that you are building, that also goes into it. So there are a lot of different imperatives that these VCs have, because of which you cannot be sure that you will get it. So you keep working on expanding market reach, right? So this. Acha, so when you do have a proof of business, it is clear that there is oil in this product or service that you are giving, even though no operating profits yet. At this stage, you should talk to multiple venture capital in parallel and series. Okay, and it's don't only be focused on money that they are giving. You should be asking what else they bring to the table other than money to scale up the operation. Right? For example, okay, they will give you legal services, or they have contacts for the next round of funding by a corporation, by a large corporation, or by another venture capital. Things like that. And whether they can bring to the table expertise for expanding the range of products and services that you are you have already started with, things like that. And how much equity for how much money are they giving? So different VCs will give you a different answer for that. And are they asking you for board or executive positions? How many? So पता चला कि आपका पूरा एग्जीक्यूटिव बोर्ड ही उन्होंने ले लिया, एंड देन आपके हाथ में कुछ रहा ही नहीं कि कंपनी किधर जाएगी, कैसे जाएगी. Right? So you need to also ask those questions and read the terms, conditions, and disbursement schedule, which is in a document often called as the term sheet. So you have to see कि क्या terms है जिसपे वो दे रहा है. So you can always negotiate between different VCs, जैसे कि you do for when you are trying to take a home on rent, कि वो तो इतने का दे रहा है, उसका घर में तो balcony भी है, right? So that way you should be doing that, other than not blindly just take the hug the first VC that comes your way with some money. So we have actually already kind of covered this thing, that what do VC look for? Founders and core team. Okay, the idea and product quality and progress that they have had, and hands-on dexterity with technology involved in the idea, because VCs themselves don't know any technology. Okay, they only understand how many times they can possibly make if this thing works, right? So when they see the product working already, some people using it happily, then they are confident about it. If they see that the team, the core team with ownership in the company is themselves hands-on with the technology involved in the idea, that gives them more confidence to give you their money. And flexibility on further course, कि आगे कैसे चलना है, क्या क्या services add करनी है, you are open to advice from them. So these are things that they look at to fund you. So in a nutshell, the VC funds and guides an idea in the hands of an impressive team. The team is very, very, very important. Okay, what are the advantages of taking a VC investor? So you get a lot of cash in hand with which you can do marketing, discounted selling of your product, and essentially leading to customer acquisition at a very fast pace. Then valuation. So just valuation पे VC आपको अपने पैसे देगा, तो VC says, okay, I will take 50% equity and give you 80 crore rupees or 800 crores. So now, if for 50% of the shares, they are giving, let's say 80 crores. So your valuation of the company immediately becomes 160 crores. And let's say you are one of the founders with 5%. So the worth of your shares in theory at this point is 5% of 160 crores. Okay, so and when you actually eventually do an IPO at let's say 500 crores, and your the equity you are holding has gone down from 5% to 1%, so now you will be able to finally cash out 1% of 500 crores, right? So valuation is important at every point in time, but really the crux of the matter is in the exit valuation, that at the end when your company is getting sold off or or IPO'd, at that point what is the valuation is, and how much you are holding after the dilution in your equity over multiple inputs of money by venture capitals, right? Over the various series A, B, C, D, E, F, ऐसे चलता है funding का, right? What also VC investor gets you is media mentions and public mind share. People know about your company because these VCs are regularly being talked to by newspapers and news channels, etc. कि आजकल आप क्या फंड कर रहे हैं, इस कंपनी के बारे में आपका क्या विचार है, blah blah. So they will tell, and then your company is getting into the limelight. And VCs can sometimes also give you business guidance, marketing and publicity support, legal inputs, etc. Right? And at a minimum, you have good money in your hands for all these expenses, marketing, discounted selling, and to pay your employees well, so they will stay with the company. And then, also build an all India or global vision plan or reach, even though you may be based in Nainital or Dehradun and so on. But आपका product जो है, with the help of the VCs contact, you can have offices in 5 different places all over India, across India, and so on and so forth, and have your distributors and marketing people and so on. So any questions at this point? And then I will look at the ethical side of things. Hello?
स्टूडेंट्स कोई क्वेरी हो तो आपकी सर से प्लीज. कोई क्वेरी है सर से? पार्टिसिपेंट्स सर से कुछ पूछना है?
ठीक है, let me go to the next section then. It's not really next section. This section only is continuing.
Yes, sir, please.
So, yeah, and I also need to go fast because, the time is also kind of run out already. So there are some, because ethics was part of the topic, I want to mention here that there are some unethical behaviors that happen at the hand of founders as well as employees of the company in their desperation to either make, grow or show profits. Right? इसकी जरूरत नहीं है, because it is understood by the startup ecosystem that most startups don't make accounting profits, or let's say many of them don't. So it's no big deal that if you don't actually have profits. So उस पे lie करके कोई फायदा नहीं है. So, and secondly, lying to employees, consultant, vendors regarding stock compensation, company valuation, deferred payments, etc. कि तुमको बाद में दे देंगे 5%, 2% in the company और फिर नहीं दिया करके. So this will eventually end up in a big mess, because if some people approach the police or the registrar of companies and so on, then false claims regarding companies' cash flow situation, which is the same thing as Jabardasti trying to show that we have more revenues than they actually have, right? And then sometimes startups can start selling personally identifiable data without obtaining consent of the users. So आपका मतलब that gets used by some other company for their marketing purposes. They already have half the, you can get a phone call. He already has 2/3 of information on you, and and he's saying हमने already आपके लिए ये बना दिया है, and you buy it from us. It could be personal loan, or it could be insurance scheme, or stuff like that. Many of them are scams, as a matter of fact. अब आप इस बात से डर जाते हो कि क्या कहते हैं, इसके बाद इतनी इंफॉर्मेशन है, तो ये तो मेरे को मतलब आई बेटर टेक दिस सर्विस फ्रॉम दिस गाय, क्योंकि ही ऑलरेडी नोज सो मच अबाउट मी. और डर जाते हो, या कई लोग गदगद भी हो जाते हैं. दे आर हैप्पी कि वाह, इसको तो पहले ही मेरे बारे में सब पता है, एंड ऑल दैट. बट दिस इज इलीगल थिंग. अनलेस आपसे कंसेंट लिया गया है, they cannot sell information about you, your phone number, your email ID, your bank account, and so on, right? So sometimes what happens is they will sell this information to other companies, and so that again is the desperation to create profits, to create revenues, in which this happens, and faking about the business readiness of the product. So sometimes they can approach angel investors or venture capital saying ये हो गया, अभी अगले हफ्ते तक हो जाएगा, and so on, कि we हमारा 90% ready है thing, etc. So if you actually get funded, first of all they will do a thorough check before giving you any money, anybody, right? Anybody professional, at least. Okay, friends and family is different matter. So if you are faking about the business readiness of the product, so either you will not get any funding, or even if you get, or you sell your thing to them, later on they can sue you back because you have sold something or taken money on misinformation, right? So इसमें ये है कि when you tie up with a VC, make use of their legal panel. Ki what kind of things you should not be doing, or keep them abreast with. Okay, हम public में ये बोल रहे हैं, ये हमारी reality है, right? So things will be much better. So some example of illegalities. एक जो on your right hand side, what you see is the Zilingo CEO. Zilingo Sachs CEO Ankiti Bose after forensic audit of accounts. So this has just happened 10 days back, right? So she lost her job because she was she was basically taking, she was underreporting expenses, and maybe possibly also taking money out of the bank account of the company, putting it into a personal, God knows what all. Nonetheless, the accounts were not in order, because of which initially she was put under investigation, which basically means a forensic audit, and then thereafter she was sacked. This is just 10 days old story. Okay, and then there's another example. There are lots of such examples, that Indian origin ex-CEO of mobile app charged with fraud in the US. क्या fraud था? Reported false revenue, overstated key financial metrics of the company. Mostly यही होता है. Apart from another thing is some embezzlement can also end up being done. कि ठीक है, health कुछ दिखाया कंपनी का, actual कुछ और है, and कुछ पैसा आपने उसमें भी डाल दिया कि कंपनी तो लॉस में है ही, ठीक है, थोड़ा सा मतलब उसको कवर अप करके अपनी जेब में भी कुछ पैसा उसमें से डाल दिया. And often this money belongs to the VCs and very powerful people, so they don't let you off. So you can't do that. There is no need to do misstatements at all. Be honest about what you are doing and where you would like to go, and be open towards suggestions from the person who is giving you his money, that okay, we are not hellbound कि यही करना करके. So allow them to steer the boat in a slightly different direction, if of course with reasoning. You have to be also convinced that वो सही कह रहा, but in no case you should be doing false statements, either to the public or to your investors or to employees for that matter, because it can land you in jail even. Forget about merely losing your position in the company, right? So another type of illegality that happens, so to say, illegality is that there was a portal called Bazi.com. I think later on it was acquired by eBay or some MNC. So it was an e-commerce portal where you could buy and sell things, and some people uploaded an obscene video for sale कि इतने में 100 रुपए में डाउनलोड कर लीजिए आप. So some people complained about it. Maybe the girl herself, one of the girls herself that was in the video, कि ये कैसे आप बेच रहे हो इसमें. So the nobody in the company did anything about it. They did not take the video off, and because they thought कि हम थोड़ी बेच रहे हैं. We just have created the portal in which people are free to buy and sell things. But the CEO of the company actually got arrested for not taking any action even after being informed कि ये जबरदस्ती का और obscene material है इसमें, right? And later on, of course, he got acquitted, got bail on the basis that government has not made any guidelines for intermediaries. So these e-commerce portals are in the nature of intermediaries. They are not producers of any content nor sellers of the content. They are just giving a platform. But even in that situation, there are certain obligations, legal obligations for the intermediary. For example, when somebody reports some wrongful activity, then they have to take action on that. However, by that time, when this case occurred, these intermediary guidelines were not in place. They came out in, I think, 2009, and the case happened in 2005. Nonetheless, the CEO did get bail, but he had to spend a few nights in jail while the bail was being processed. Right? So these kind of mistakes can also happen. These kind of illegalities that you thought कि ये मेरी liability है ही नहीं, this thing. इसमें मैं नहीं फंसूंगा करके. So that's why also or such things also the legal panel that VC brings on the table can be very helpful to you, or be in touch with a person which is conversant with technology law, etc., and keep such a person abreast with क्या कर रहे हैं आजकल, right? So they can tell you how to stay out of getting accidentally shot by the law. So the end game of startups is fabulous return on their time, effort, and money for founders, external funders like angel investors, venture capital, etc., and employees. Okay. I have mentioned in many times that it is possible that a startup never turns a profit and yet gets sold to a big fish or IPO to public, leaving founders, funders, and employees quite, to use a street word, mala mal, basically, right? And it is officially called exit, कि हमारा काम खत्म, हम अपनी अगली startup बना रहे हैं. All right. So how the thing gets absorbed by the larger society is that startup can become cost center in a big company. तो उसमें उसको profitability कोई बात नहीं है. It is the overall that big company has to be profitable, and certain things that help that company acquire new users, new customers of its total array of products is being accommodated now via acquisition of this the startup, and becomes a cost center. So profit की बात ही खत्म हो गई, right? Then it can become a prestigious extension or collaborator of a big company. Like Microsoft was already selling web browsers and selling web content, MSN.com. So social media is a natural extension of what it was already doing. So that's why it was at one point in time very, very strongly interested in buying 100% of either Facebook or LinkedIn. Finally, they ended up buying 10-12% of Facebook, or maybe 15. I have a slide on that. Maybe we'll take a look what it was. It can also get acquired as an R&D or experimental unit by a bigger company. Nonetheless, startup के जो founders हैं, उन्होंने एक company बनाई, वो चल रही थी, customers को use कर रहे थे, happy थे, वो बाद में R&D बन गई unit of a bigger company. So that's fine, but they made their money with which they can start their next startup, where they don't have to compromise at all. They can take the next company to be associated with it till whenever whatever point they want, without having to sell it. Okay, so yeah, the slide that I was talking about, that end of that this Microsoft wanted to buy one of these companies, right, in 2007, LinkedIn or Facebook, because they wanted to extend themselves into social media or professional media. And so they ended up just buying 1.6% at 240 million, giving Facebook a valuation of $15 billion. कि अगर ये 1.6% का 240 million है, तो 100% का कितना हुआ? 15 billion. So let's say Facebook founder Zuckerberg even had at that point in time 10% stake. So he's straight away $1.5 billion. That's multiple, Arab rupees, essentially. So then in 2012, it got the Facebook went to IPO at $100 billion. So somebody owning 1% of 1% in Facebook at that time, and it would be only one of the initial founders or one of the VC companies, all right, would straight away be worth $1 billion, just the shares of Facebook that they were holding at the IPO time. So these are the kind of fabulous turnaround of money that startups can give you, and then they can leave you with an amount of money that you can create your next startup on your own, don't have to depend on external financing, or you could even go venture into social work with that. Okay, so what I will do is I will essentially, one second. So I will actually end the slide, the slideshow here, the talk, because the rest of the topics are more like appendix additional, which I have actually already covered while talking through the previous slides. So they are just much of it is repeat only, and so let me linger on this slide for a couple of minutes, and then I'll go to the very last slide, which has a super summary of the presentation. Right, because we've already much overstepped the time also, and many of the things that are coming in the subsequent slides from this point onwards have already been actually covered while I was talking in the previous slides. So glamour and attraction of startups is that you get very high valuation in spite of minuscule profits or continuing losses, and they eventually end up in a spectacular exit at a spectacular valuation. All thanks mostly to these venture capitals only, because they know whom to pitch the company and the progress that it has made, who will buy it for that price, because it sees that value to their own business that they're already running. There is name and fame, media coverage, and money bags chase you for your next venture. That is people, venture capital, big corporations, big individual wealthy people, that because they have seen you, that you have made, you have successfully completed a whole life cycle of a startup. So it becomes, they come to you. And even if you had a spectacular failure, because what they think is कि चलो इसको experience तो है इस चीज का, right? He now knows what not to do. Whereas somebody who has never tried a startup, he doesn't really know compared to this person. So even if you have a spectacular failure, that you went to $10 billion of valuation, and then after that suddenly nobody was interested in the company, and its previous financing also ran out in paying for expenses of existence for the company, and then you just closed down. So that would be a spectacular failure, but still you will get people interested in giving you their money to build your next startup because you have experience, right? So high salary for key personnel, especially when funded by outsiders capital. When VCs give you their money, they want you to stay also with the company. So they make sure that you are being paid appropriately so that you won't run away. Of course, they will also secure your loyalty with with contractual obligation also that you cannot just simply exit from the company because आपके नाम पे उसने पैसा दिया, आपसे impress होके पैसा दिया, right? Then potential exit / sale of business for many times out of pocket investment. तो आपने पता लगा मुश्किल से 1.5 लाख रुपया लगाया था और आपको मतलब 1.5 अरब रुपया बन गया या 500 करोड़ बन गया या 100 करोड़ बन गया, right? So that is another reason why people start startups or work for startups. And then of course, very important is working in an area of technology that is considered state of the art, leading edge, latest and greatest. However, the key word here is considered latest and greatest. Often it's, it is possible that if otherwise that business idea has, potential, or funders think it has potential, or buyer think it has potential to grow further and give them some additional business success. So they will, even if it is something very simple, they will fund it and you will make your money, you will make your name and fame, even though it is not latest and greatest that you're working on, but people will assume it must be latest and greatest. So sometimes it's an area of technology which is latest and greatest and leading edge, and sometimes it's considered so or deemed to be so because everybody is throwing their money around it. Okay. So I will now basically go to the very last slide of it, which is a summary of, it's a 1-point summary of what we are talking. Because as we know, the topic is legal and ethical steps in planning a startup, legal and ethical steps, right? So uska summary simply itna hi hai that you build focused bite-sized minimum viable product, and we know what minimum viable product means. छोटी सी problem को solve कर रहा, which is a complete problem. That is कि घर बैठे हुए cab book करनी है और cab घर के नीचे दरवाजे तक आए, and then you step into it, go where you want to go, rather than first have to go to the street and check यारे taxi stand तो खाली पड़ा है, nobody is there, तो आप अगले चौराहे तक गए, अगले चौराहे तक गए, तो all that is cut out. Simply with the click of few buttons, your cab comes to home. So that's a very simple, small, bite-sized problem. So you build that, and that's the minimum viable product. Uske baad Uber has got Uber Eats, and you can split the cab expense, the cab bill between 3 people while you are taking the ride. All these kind of things can bill it to your company कि ये business travel है जी, and so on. तो ये features तो बाद में आते रहे, but initially they just built, how to book a cab. It will come to your home. You don't have to leave your home to find a taxi. Okay, so build, focus, bite-sized, minimum viable product. Incorporate, that is register the company when founders have agreed on their respective responsibilities. Contribution, meaning work contribution as well as money contribution, and who will get how much shares in the initial equity of the company. Okay, so another step is to get associated with an incubation center for leveraging their contacts and information. For example, let us say, the IIC at Kumaon University had a incubation center. So now it's the Kumaon University that got into touch with me because they wanted to give information in a certain format to their students, right? Or people associated with the IIC, especially, and Kumaon University in general. So they, basically went around searching for such a person, and they found me, engaged me, and I'm here talking to you, and hopefully the talk is eventually going to give you enough information and enough motivation to consider being startup entrepreneurs. So what I'm saying is that association with an incubation center, with that you can basically leverage their contacts and informations that they already have, and that can cut out a lot of things for you, especially while you are still building the MVP, the minimum viable product. You can also keep applying to these angel investors that often visit incubation centers, right? तो मिला तो मिला, नहीं तो कोई बात नहीं. You get to proof of business situation, and acquiring customers. Market acquisition means acquiring customers, and then you preferably try and get funded by a venture capital, which will be a big amount funding, which will give you a very big valuation, and that funding will help you scale and expand very fast, right? And then important point is, do not misstate or misproject revenue or any other aspect of health of the company. For example, employee turnover, कि कितने employees हमारे को छोड़ के जा रहे हैं, कितने join कर रहे हैं, कितने रुके हुए हैं, कितने साल से. Don't fudge these figures. What contracts of buying we have secured, etc. So do not misstate things, because it can land you into some serious trouble, a few nights in jail, etc. और इसकी जरूरत नहीं है, because the people who choose to fund startups, they understand that it may not ever be about profits. It is quite possible. So there is no real need to lie, really. People, startup owners do end up often sometimes lying to employees and trying to secure their services with promises which they do not intend to honor. And sometimes some such employee or consultant or engagee can tomorrow actually sue them in court, and then वो company ही पता लगा बंद हो गया, उसका इतना बदनामी हो गई कि it just couldn't survive, and unnecessary, even though with losses, however covered by a good capital cover from multiple rounds of funding by venture capital, it could have actually continued on and exit, and the founders and other stakeholders could have exited at a very good profit, many times what they put in, even 50 to 100 times. But because they slipped into speaking lies, etc., which hurt somebody, and they sued them in court or went to the police, something like that, unnecessarily आपका स्टार्टअप बंद हो गया, तो उसका कोई पॉइंट नहीं करने का. अच्छा, adjust business plan and exit options in discussion with VC reps, because end of the day the VC knows better कि final consumer of this startup as a company कौन है और वो कितने पैसे दे सकता है, क्या वैल्यू है उस व्यक्ति के हाथ में आपकी स्टार्टअप की, राइट? तो you should always when you have VC, do read carefully the terms and conditions that the VC is making you sign on, and that they are fair to you as well as to them. However, once you have tied up with the VC, you've taken his money, be always in discussion with them in terms of what you are doing next, how you are expanding, which market you are expanding, and any help that you might need, any advisory help, etc., that you might need from them. So end of the day, good luck, and I hope that these information will bring some clarity into you कि आपको startup बनाना भी है कि नहीं बनाना है, या क्या startup के लिए काम करना है as an employee, or whether you want to make a traditional own company of your own. So traditional company means within 2.5 years you want to be profitable. In fact, even less than that, within a year or so. And those are the companies that the banks tend to finance. So thank you very much. And if there are any questions, we can quickly take a couple of them. We have already badly overstepped that time.
कोई क्वेरी है आप लोगों की? प्लीज सर से कुछ पूछना है तो पूछिए. Participants, do you have any query, any question?
नमस्कार सर, मैं महेश आर्य बोल रहा हूँ. क्या मेरी आवाज सुनाई दे रही?
हाँ, बिल्कुल सुनाई दे रही.
सर, अगर कोई स्टार्टअप शुरू करना चाहता है तो अपना पैसा इन्वेस्ट करके स्टार्टअप करना ज्यादा अच्छा रहेगा या कहीं से फंड जुटाकर?
देखिए, पहली बात ये है इसमें कि आपके पास पैसा है कितना और उस स्टार्टअप को कितना चाहिए, मतलब उस आइडिया को कितना पैसा चाहिए। ठीक है, तो मान लीजिए आपके पास अपने डालने का सब जगह से खर्च के भी 40 लाख आ रहा है, लेकिन टोटल जो आपका एम्बिशन है उस कंपनी के माध्यम से, दैट रिक्वायर्स 5 करोड़। ठीक है, तो ऑब्वियसली यू नीड कैपिटल फ्रॉम आउटसाइड। अब सवाल ये है कि वेंचर कैपिटल से लिया जाए कि बैंक से लिया जाए, ठीक है, या अन्य लोगों से सिंपल इक्विटी ली जाए। तो उसमें ऐसा है कि देखिए, वीसी का जो एडवांटेज है वो यही है कि वो फाइनली आपकी स्टार्टअप बिकवा देगा बहुत अच्छी प्राइस में। इनफैक्ट अगर उसको कॉन्फिडेंस नहीं होगा कि ये स्टार्टअप अगर सक्सीड करी, इसने कस्टमर्स एक्वायर किए और उसके बाद वो he doesn't know any such, he is not aware of any companies who will want to buy this, तो वो फंड ही नहीं करेगा। ठीक है ना, तो मेरा कहने का मतलब ये है कि आप इन पैरेलल यू कैन अटेम्प्ट डिफरेंट ऑप्शंस of taking capital from outside. It could be friends or through your social network कि कौन लोग क्या क्या करना चाहते हैं, मतलब पैसा डालना चाह रहे हैं इसमें, and if they are convinced about it। और एक तो आपका नेटवर्क हो गया पर्सनल, they will typically put in equity or loans, then banks हो गए, they will put in loans, and then venture capital है जो इक्विटी लेगी। ठीक है, इसमें सबसे ज्यादा प्रेफरेबल आपके लिए वेंचर कैपिटल है, क्योंकि वो आपको कई गुना जो पैसा है वो दिलाएगा। लेकिन कोई जरूरी नहीं है कि जो स्टार्टअप आपके माइंड में है वो वेंचर कैपिटल उसको स्टार्टअप माने भी। ठीक है, माने भी तो वो उसमें इंटरेस्टेड हो। सो वेंचर कैपिटल तो बहुत सारे हैं, आप सबसे बात कीजिए, बट बी प्रिपेयर्ड फॉर दिस सिचुएशन दैट द वेंचर कैपिटल मे नॉट इन्वेस्ट इन योर फॉर वैरायटी ऑफ रीजंस, राइट। तो ये है कि यदि अपना पैसा, अच्छा अब आपने कहा कि भाई मैं अपना पैसा डालूं या बाहर वालों से लूं, तो यदि आपके पास अपना पैसा उतना है जितना की चाहिए, तब भी मैं ये कहूंगा कि आप पूरा पैसा एक साथ न डालें, और तब भी आप वेंचर कैपिटल को अप्रोच करें प्रोडक्ट बनाने के बाद, बिकॉज एंड गिव देम अ पार्ट ऑफ योर इक्विटी, बिकॉज वो जिस प्राइस पे जिस व्यक्ति को बिकवा सकते हैं ना, आपको पता भी नहीं होगा कि ऐसा वो व्यक्ति एग्जिस्टेंस में है, राइट।
जी सर।
So that is what the advantages of taking a VC। एक तो आपके पास पैसा है ही नहीं पूरा, दूसरा है भी तो you don't know कि ये जो मैं बना रहा हूँ वो कितने ज्यादा में किसी को, जैसे आप अपना फ्लैट नहीं रियल एस्टेट ब्रोकर के माध्यम से बेचते, ठीक है, तो वो उस तरह का है समवॉट। हालांकि रियल एस्टेट ब्रोकर तो आपका फ्लैट बिकवाने के 2% ही लेगा, और वेंचर कैपिटल तो इक्विटी लेगा। नॉनदलेस आपको भी कई गुना ज्यादा मिलेगा देन इफ यू ट्राई टू सेल योर थिंग ऑन योर ओन। So this would be my practical input to that.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
थैंक यू सर। और कोई क्वेरी हो तो प्लीज। ठीक है, हम सर से बाद में भी अगर कोई क्वेरी होगी तो डिस्कस कर सकते हैं।
Right. Absolutely.
Thank you, sir, for such an informative lecture. I hope all the participants are benefited with your talk. And now, on the behalf of KU-IIC, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed keynote speaker, Vardhan Pant, sir, for giving his valuable time and interacting with our students. Sincere thanks to Vice Chancellor and Registrar of Kumar University, Director DSB, SRICC for facilitating this event. And I'm very much thankful to all my team members, Director KU-IIC, Dr. Shushma Damta, Dr. Neelu Lodhial, Dr. Geeta Tiwari, Dr. Chavi Arya, Dr. Mahesh Arya, Mr. KK Pandey, Mr. Anubhav Mehra, Dr. Nandan Mehra, and Dr. Naveen Pandey. I'm also thankful to all the participants who had made this event successful. And I would like to say that don't limit yourself. Many people limit themselves to what they think they can do. You can go as far as your mind lets you. What you believe, remember, you can achieve. Thank you. Thank you for being with us.
Okay, thank you everybody. Thanks for being a wonderful audience, and thank you also for a pointed question that came in, which basically means that information got processed and then the real query came out of it, and of a very fundamental nature at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Bye. Thanks.